Freedom is being able to do what you please without considering anyone except your wife, the police, your boss, your life insurance company, your doctor, your airline, government authorities, and your neighbors. You know, I think Martin Buxbaum was being somewhat cynical at the time he wrote that thought in Table Talk, but I don't think he realized how true that statement would eventually become. Harry Emerson Fosdick said, "It is cynicism and fear that freezes life. It is faith that thaws it out, releases it, sets it free." Hello once again, I'm Don Jackson. You might remember that old saying, if you love someone, set them free. If they return, they're yours. If they don't, they never were, or words to that effect. Anne Morrow Lindbergh, in The Unicorn and Other Poems, wrote about this very kind of freedom. She said, "Him that I love, I wish to be free, even from me." And someone else said, when you can embrace all of life, not holding on to anything beyond its time, and not avoiding anything once its time has come, then you will know the true meaning of freedom. The sights and sounds of freedom, along with the sound of the heartbeat of the internet. Being free allows us to savor the little things in life. Oliver Wendell Holmes said, "In walking, the will and the muscles are so accustomed to working together and performing their task with so little expenditure of force that the intellect is left comparatively free." Diane Ackerman, in A Slender Thread, published by Random House, said, "As anyone setting out on a walk knows, it's hard to empty your mind of worry, analyzing, and hurting. Your agitations travel with you, and you rehearse dreaded or hoped-for conversations. But if you can, give yourself a mental vacation. Leave home all the worries, hurts, and misgivings. Then you can set off to enjoy the sensations of being alive, the beauty of light, the bird calls, the wind and sun on your face. Freed from the commotions of your mind, you can allow yourself to be the photographic plate on which the world etches itself." Beverly Sills, the opera singer, was quoted in McCall's magazine some years back as saying, "One of the qualities that separate us two-legged animals from the four-legged ones is compassion. It is what makes us stand up tall instead of crawling about on all fours. And standing up tall is what frees our arms to reach out to a fellow being and say, 'Let me help you.'" This is a true story about the prolific inventor Leonardo da Vinci. Although he was a great man of science, Leonardo had the tenderest of feelings. He was so soft-hearted toward living animals that he disliked to see a bird caged. He used to buy whole cages of them when he saw them on the streets of Florence and set them free. Probably brought a smile to his face. Carl A. Menninger, from the book The Human Mind, published by Knopfler, wrote, "When a trout, rising to a fly, gets hooked and finds himself unable to swim about freely, he begins a fight which results in struggles and splashes, and sometimes an escape. In the same way, the human being struggles with the hooks that catch him. Sometimes he masters his difficulties. Sometimes they are too much for him. His struggles are all that the world sees, and it usually misunderstands them. It is hard for a free fish to understand what is happening to a hooked one. Laura reached out and touched Ward's cheek very gently. His skin was warm and smooth. She traced the line of the stain. His face beneath her hand was mysterious, closed to her. With a sense of freedom came another realization. She could choose Ward or not herself. It was not only his decision. And freed, she knew now what she wanted. "I love you," she said. An excerpt from Summer Light by Roxana Robinson. We should also consider what Khalil Gibran said in The Prophet concerning freedom. Then a hermit who visited the city once a year came forth and said, "Speak to us of pleasure." And he answered, saying, "Pleasure is a freedom song, but it is not a freedom. It is the blossoming of your desires, but it is not their fruit. It is a depth calling unto a height, but it is not the deep nor the high. It is the caged taking wing, but it is not space encompassed." In very truth, pleasure is a freedom song, and I fain would have you sing it with fullness of heart. Yet I would not have you lose your hearts in the singing. The world has never had a good definition of the word liberty. With some, the word may mean for each man to do as he pleases with himself and the product of his labor. With others, the same word may mean for some men to do as they please with other men and the product of other men's labor. Here are two different, incompatible things called by the same name, liberty. And it follows that each of the things is, by the respective parties, called by two different and incompatible names, liberty and tyranny. The words of Abraham Lincoln, and no, he was not a vampire hunter or a hunter of werewolves, as the movies would have you believe. A contemporary writer said, "The person who risks nothing, does nothing, has nothing, is nothing. He may avoid suffering and sorrow, but he cannot learn, feel, change, grow, or love. Chained by his certitudes, he is a slave. He has forfeited his freedom. Only a person who takes risks is free." The renowned American poet Robert Frost, in the book Letters of Robert Frost to Louis Untermeyer, published by Holt, Reinhardt, and Winston, said, "All men are born free and equal, free at least in their right to be different. Some people want to homogenize society everywhere. I'm against the homogenizers in art, in politics, in every walk of life. I want the cream to rise." End quote. But our freedom can easily be taken away, not always by outside forces. Sometimes we push blindly ahead, knowing that our freedom could be lost at any moment. Robert Louis Stevenson wrote, "I wished a companion to lie near me in the starlight, silent and not moving, but ever within touch. For there is a fellowship more quiet even than solitude, and which, rightfully understood, is solitude made perfect. And to live out of doors with the woman a man loves is of all lives the most complete and free. But there are some who feel that a relationship has the right to take away another's freedom. William Blake wrote, "How sweet I roamed from field to field, and tasted all the summer's pride, till I the Prince of Love beheld, who in the sunny beams did glide. He showed me lilies for my hair, and blushing roses for my brow. He led me through his gardens fair, where all his golden pleasures grow. With sweet May dews my wings were wet, and Phoebus furred my vocal rage. He caught me in his silken net, and shut me in his golden cage. He loves to sit and hear me sing, then laughing sports and plays with me, then stretches out my golden wing and mocks my loss of liberty." It's not the type of net you want to find yourself in. Love should be an experience of freedom for both parties. Dorothy Parker said, "Love is like quicksilver in the hand. Leave the fingers open and it stays. Clutch it and it darts away." There are songs that come free from the blue-eyed grass, from the dust of 1,000 country roads. Robert James Waller in The Bridges of Madison County. I've always liked this excerpt from the Canadian bestseller When Lovers Are Friends by Merle Shane, a Bantam Skylark book. In it she writes, "There is a Buddhist tale written over 2,000 years ago by the Buddha himself, some say, about a beautiful young elephant who lived in the forest near Benares. She was as white as crane's down, according to the legend, and her size and her strength were so great that the men who captured her gave her as a present to the king. The king entrusted her to his elephant trainers to be taught to stand firm and to follow commands. But the trainers were harsh with her and beat her with their elephant goads. And one day, maddened by pain, she broke free of them and escaped. She ran as fast as she could for many days, traveling as far into the Himalayan mountains as she could go, until she outdistanced all the king's men who were chasing her. And in time, they all went home, and she was free. But she still raced on, and although time passed, she did not reduce her pace or forget for a moment that she had been a captive once. Every time a twig snapped or a breath of wind rustled the trees, she dashed off at full speed, thrashing her trunk wildly from side to side. Finally, a compassionate tree sprite could stand her pain no longer and leaned out of a fork in a tree one day and whispered into the elephant's ear, "Do you fear the wind? It only moves the clouds and dries the dew. You ought to look in your mind. It's fear that has captured you." And the minute the wood sprite had spoken, the beautiful elephant realized that she had nothing to fear but the habit of being afraid, and she began to enjoy life again. There are really only two ways to approach life, as victim or as gallant fighter. And you must decide if you want to act or react, deal your own cards, or play with a stacked deck. And if you don't decide which way to play with life, it always plays with you. A lot of people forget that, so they scan the books that tell you how to make people respond as you'd have them do, or look for someone to protect them from the world. But the fact is that nothing works but to learn to trust yourself and to understand that each encounter makes you stronger, even the ones you lose. The words of Merle Shane. What a great lyric by Kristofferson. Freedom's just another word for nothing left to lose. Leo Roston, quoted in Look magazine, said, "The power of words. They sing. They hurt. They teach. They sanctify. They were man's first immeasurable feat of magic. They liberated us from ignorance and our barbarous past. For without these marvelous scribbles, which build letters into words, words into sentences, sentences into systems and sciences and creeds, man would be forever confined to the self-isolated prison of the cuttlefish or the chimpanzee. We live by words, love, truth, God. We fight for words, freedom, country, fame. We die for words, liberty, glory, honor. They bestow the priceless gift of articulacy on our minds and hearts, from mama to infinity. And those who truly shape our destiny, the giants who teach us, inspire us, lead us to deeds of immortality, are those who use words with clarity, grandeur, and passion. Socrates, Luther, Lincoln, Churchill, end quote. Sophocles in Antigone reminds us of just one word, and probably the most powerful of all words. He wrote, "One word frees us of all the weight and pain of life. That word is love." Good night, sweet dreams. I'm Don Jackson.